From the split decision loss to Tommy Fury in the most exciting fights to kickstart 2023, to choosing his next opponent to redeem himself, Jake Paul is already thinking about the next step of his career, and his next opponent is probably gonna be Nate Diaz. Yep, the YouTuber turned boxer took a massive step up in competition after his loss to Tommy, and now he's already looking ahead to a pretty busy year as he's got his eyes on the UFC legend, Diaz. Now, let's just say he's probably one of the most in-demand fighters in combat sports at the moment. I mean, he's got offers coming in from promotions across MMA and even bare knuckle for his services. All in all, he's a huge pay-per-view draw, and it seems like there's a possibility for the two to fight this year after all. And in an exclusive chat, Paul said,
"They want to tear you down, and they say you won't do something, and when you do it, they'll find a different thing to hate on." And for me, it's about changing combat sports in general. You know, that's what I've always been passionate about doing.
I think in boxing, people are like, don't look past your opponent. But then that just means that you truly don't believe you're going to win. Now, he's got a whole Google calendar set up to plan every single one of his days. Pretty organized if you ask me. And in that same calendar, he's also squeezing in a bout with Diaz in a boxing ring, not the MMA cage.
But when we get into that ring, I know he's going to bring that heat, and I'm bringing that heat. So it's going to be a dogfight. And this just helps the sport of boxing, you know, as a whole.
In fact, the two teams are already talking about it. For starters, Paul offered him a 2-fight deal. The first is going to be in the ring, where he'd get a huge advantage, and the second one's going to be inside the PFL Smart Cage. And let's just say, if that happens, then he'd probably be giving up an unimaginable advantage to Diaz. But is the UFC legend keen on the idea? I don't think so. On top of that, Logan Paul might be a bigger problem than you'd think, because Diaz isn't particularly impressed with his disrespectful comments towards Tommy. And for that, Diaz called him a spoiled little... I mean, sure, the fight definitely didn't pan out the way Logan and Jake expected it to. Halfway through the fight, we already knew that his British rival looked like the better boxer, and the victory simply proved it. But when Logan was interviewed in between rounds, the sound was broadcast throughout the arena. And while he had enough encouragement for his younger brother, he wasn't the most respectful person towards Tommy.
I'm fighting tomorrow night, Tyson Fury, second round knockout.
I get it, they're rivals, but boundaries maybe. Think about it. Even though he tried to get in Fury's head, Jake still lost by split decision. So maybe that wasn't the classiest move after all. Having said that, there's a lot to consider before making this fight a reality. Let's just say that until Diaz is willing to transition to professional wrestling,
they called with that. I figured that was what they would do. I didn't even figure anything. It just all happened. Everything just flipped.
And then, so I think this guy had a good last fight.
Logan needs to count on someone else to deliver the beatdown that he thinks Paul deserves. But if everything works out, I think you can expect to see the two fight sometime in the summer. As I mentioned, he wants to do 1 fight boxing and 1 fight MMA.
In and ready to implement the game. My turn to pull out of the fight. I'm joking. This is crazy. Yeah, I'm just excited.
Yo, Jake, tell him about that.
But I'm not sure if Diaz is going to be in on that, because his team hasn't really come forward with any serious negotiations.
A bunch of other people's fights on my team and just for watching, so I didn't even notice. I want to mic people can't help but to
And wait for a couple weeks, because soon enough, Jake will also open up about any other opponents he's got lined up for 2023. Because let's face it, the YouTuber turned boxer isn't going to sit around after facing the first loss of his boxing career, especially after how the hyped fight even happened. I mean, are we forgetting the months of online trash talk from the Molly May DM to Tyson Fury's threats for his younger brother?
That moment, and now we've got the win, we can relax and actually be a couple again, because I feel I've not seen it for like 2 months.
We'll know more on Monday, I think. The two broadcasters are going to meet on Monday, and then we'll know.
Both their careers were at stake. In fact, Fury's family didn't even want him back if he wouldn't grab that win.
In God's kingdom. And I believe he's picked Tyson in this time to wrong a lot. There was no more for me to do. In my mind, I'd achieved everything I ever wanted to do. One being world champion.
Instead, he was going to be looking towards retirement. Not to mention, he canceled 2 fights before this.
I always make the weight that's specified in the contract. So that was that. So the fact that in 4 weeks I can put it all to bed and I can do the job on him makes me very happy, man.
Sure, a chest infection and a broken rib is a pretty valid reason to cancel the fight, but a denied US visa entry? I wouldn't be too sure. And if that wasn't enough, he didn't even show up at the first promotional event of the hyped fight. If I'm being honest, at that point, a lot of us were thinking he's just trying to avoid the fight, mostly because he's not ready to face Jake.
The prep company that I've always used, and the ones that I will always stick with, because for me, and even in the gym, you know, he knows how much to push me, how, you know, when to hold me back, whether I'm feeling.
But after how the fight turned out, I'd say otherwise. And if you still haven't had enough of the fight, I've got some good news for you. We might be getting a Tommy Fury rematch. I mean, there's no specific clause about it in Paul's contract, so if the rivals agree, they can definitely make this happen. And after how the rivalry started, how it went on and got more intense, right until the time that Tommy practically handed him his first career loss, I don't think Jake's gonna let that go easily. But while we give Tommy some time to think about it, he might even move towards a fight with the social media sensation KSI. And let's just say he was quick to rub it in right after the YouTuber's first defeat. So I'm not too sure if he'd still be up to fight the 29-year-old, because KSI definitely set a fight in December, but only for the winner. So he's got his eyes on Tommy instead. But with all that money and rivalry, if I were you, I wouldn't totally rule out the bitter grudge match. I mean, there's still hope. And what if I told you there's one more fighter who might make the cut? Yep, I'm talking about Mike Perry. Now, simply put, the former UFC fighter turned bare knuckle boxer was the backup opponent if Fury pulled out last minute. And I wouldn't blame Jake for that, especially after how the Brit backed out from the fight twice in a row. In fact, rumor has it a 2-fight deal in boxing and MMA might be coming up. And if you ask me, Paul might as well go after Perry instead of Diaz.
Louder and louder and louder. And jittery on stage. You see his feet, his whole body.
But somebody that comes from a boxing family.
I don't feel the pressure.
If he's looking for a decent style matchup to build his reputation back up after his first career loss, I just think it'd be a much safer and smart choice. Having said that, he's also looking at something more exciting, but that's a further away.
We're trying to get him into the ring. But it's a perfect next step for me. It's a massive fight. He's a professional boxer. Tyson's funny, man. I actually love the guy. And I would love to see a clip of that.
He's eyeing an MMA debut with PFL in 2024. Meanwhile, he's also going to be promoting their shows. I mean, after 3 intense years as a pro boxer, the American might as well get a nice change. Am I right? And what a better time than now to swap the ring for the cage, especially considering the 2-fight deal with Diaz becomes a reality and offers him the golden opportunity to experience both. Having said that, the rivalry with Tommy Fury was definitely a turning point in his career, because even though the younger brother doesn't have a lot of experience with his name, he's got the Fury name that's worth a lot more than you think. And if his YouTube fame wasn't enough, his rivalry with the Furies got him a lot of attention, a lot of which was pretty crucial for his career. Had he won this fight, it would have been a game changer for his career. And if I'm being honest, most of us were actually counting on him grabbing the win, not just because of his boxing record, but also because of the fact that Tommy seemed to back out of the fight every chance he got. And that just made it pretty weird, because it seemed like he wasn't ready to fight. But after his career-defining loss, things won't be the same for Jake. And there you have it. That's everything you need to know about Jake Paul's focus on Diaz for an upcoming fight.
We were out here in August for the AJ fight.
Oh yeah, I bet.
It was unbearable then.
I will beat him. I'm built different.